Right now, I'm challenging myself to see if I can make 128 Regulation H teams that are each different from one another over the course of 128 days. Why 128, you might ask? At the end of the 128 days, we're going to do something special where we battle every team against each other in a single elimination bracket to see which team emerges on top. There will be some competitively strong teams, there will be some gimmick teams, and there will be some probably a good number of goofs and gaffs in there, so if you want to follow through to the end, subscribe so that you can keep up with each day. But without further ado, let's move on to day 111. Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to be going over a team that I made because I miss Boltund. Boltund was so fun back in Generation 8 because you could click electrify into the opposing Pokemon, and what the move electrify does is that it makes it so that the move that the opposing Pokemon is using that you hit with electrify will become an electric type move, which means that basically they'll lose stab unless they're an electric type, and also all your electric, ground, grass, and dragon mons will resist the move, which is super fun. But unfortunately, they decided to not give us the two Pokemon that learn electrify in Scarlet and Violet, which are Heliolisk and Boltund. Probably because they didn't want Terra Ground Electrify to be like a thing, because that would be extremely difficult to overcome in singles. But for doubles, I think it would have been just such a fun strategy. But we have a bunch of friends that Boltund would like to be friends with, ideally if we go back to not having terrestrialization in Generation 10 and we get Boltund. There's a good number of Pokemon that would like to be hit by electric type moves. Starting off with the Alolan Golem here, with us being an electric type, we can take not a lot of damage from electric type moves, and if there is a Pokemon on the opposite side of the field that would do a lot of damage into Golem, which would not allow it to get off its Galvanize Explosion, where we have a 250 base power move that is turned into an electric type move and boosted by our ability Galvanize. Then we have a more realistic way to get off the Galvanize Explosion, and Boltund would also resist the explosion, so it would maybe live. Maybe it would be like a Focus Sash Boltund, but Golem could do a ton of damage to the opponent, and also Galvanize is very reminiscent of Electrify, but only on ourselves. And then we also have the Galvanize in Body Slam to make it so that we have an electric type Body Slam that's being boosted, and also a 30% chance to paralyze the target can come up, but it's really not the focus of using the Body Slam. It's just that we want a really strong electric physical move because there aren't a lot of those at all. And we also just have the Rock Slide as our other stab for spread hitting the opponent, and we are using Magnet to even further increase the power of our electric type moves that we're using, and we're Terra Electric so that we can shed our rock typing, since rock does give us a lot of weaknesses and a quad weakness, so just becoming pure electric with a decent defense stat and not so much special defense stat, but decent defense stat for trying to get off the explosion with Golem is pretty nice. Up next, we have Palmot, who we can use our Volt Absorb in order to make it so that we are not getting hit by electric type moves, and Volt Absorb also doesn't redirect electric type moves, which means that we can use Electrify with Boltund and into the opponent, and then Palmot will get its HP healed, and it won't redirect the move. And this Palmot set is a super gimmicky set that you can use, probably because this is the last time that we're going to be using Palmot. But this is a Rest, Sleep Talk, Revival Blessing set, where we hopefully get off the Revival Blessing in order to maybe bring back Golem after it self-destructs, and we're Volt Absorbed so we don't get hit by the self-destruction. Then we can go boom with Golem again, perhaps. Or we can just Revival Bless something else on the team, and then whenever we use our Revival Blessing, we will go down to 0 PP on the move since it only has 1 PP, which will allow us to immediately eat our Lepa Berry in order to restore PP to Revival Blessing, and then we can click Revival Blessing again. Or if we still have a PP on Revival Blessing and we need to heal at Palmot, we can go for Rest, and then Sleep Talk has the ability to select Revival Blessing. So technically this team can become undefeatable as long as we get pretty lucky with the Rest Sleep Talks. But also we have the coaching in order to increase the defense and also the attack of all of our attacker Pokemon, which I think is technically every Pokemon except for Gothitelle. And we are Terra Dark on the Palmot so that we are not getting Prankster taunted, because if we get taunted on Palmot, Palmot's not going to be able to do anything. Next up, we slotted on Donphan, and Oh boy, Donphan. Listen, okay, I wanted to get Donphan in because I don't think that Donphan is useless. This might be the time to explain that this is the biggest bump that we've had in the 128 teams challenge, was me trying to get out this team, because I had a completely different team that was the sponsorship themed team, where I just made a bunch of Pokemon that like kind of represent sponsorship. Not that the video would be sponsored by any means, just like the general idea of sponsorships. And the team, I just could never get it to work, and I thought it was a really gimmicky idea. So then I moved into this Golem explosion team, kinda, and Donphan, it needs to get out there. Okay, Donphan, we have the Ice Shard in order to like break Focus Sashes guaranteed for whenever Golem explodes, but something's Focus Sash, then we can use Ice Shard in order to get its Focus Sash, and then we just have our Stab in the high horsepower, and we're sturdy so that we can always take a hit, and since we can always take a hit, and if Boltund used Electrify into an opposing Pokemon to make it so that it can't hit Donphan because it's a ground type, and another physical attack went into Donphan, then we can always take that physical attack and we can go for counter in order to get rid of that Pokemon if it's not a ghost type. And then we also have the safety goggles on Donphan to make it so that we are not being affected by any powder moves that would redirect attacks for Donphan or put Donphan to sleep, like with Sleep Powder or Spore. And we're Terra Water because water is just a nice defensive type for Donphan. Next up, we have Raichu, and I decided to go with a... Everything is so gimmicky on this team, that's crazy. I decided to go with a gimmicky Raichu in the sense that we have physical attack Raichu. So we have Feint in order to make it so that we can lead Raichu Golem, and then if we want Golem to explode, but the opponent's going to protect, we can Feint them to not only maybe break a Focus Sash, but in order to make it so that Golem ignores their protect by breaking it with Feint. Feint is also +2 priority, so you can use it to get around some of the redirection stuff, because we're so fast with Raichu. And then we're using physical Raichu, so we can use our physical Volt Tackle into the opponent, doing a lot of big physical electric type damage and maybe getting a paralysis every once in a while. And then we also have the Terra Blast in order to use Terra Ice, Terra Blast in order to try and hit ground types. And this would be nice if we had Regieleki here, because Regieleki would just be fast and it could do the whole Terra Ice, Terra Blast thing better than Raichu, but we don't have Regieleki, so we're using Raichu. And also Raichu is Lightning Rod, which we cannot directly use with Boltund's Electrify, because Electrify will just be redirected into Raichu. However, Raichu does support the rest of the team pretty well, and if you're a more realistic person, you can just put Fake Out on the Raichu instead of Feint, and it's probably more useful. But I think in the getting Golem to explode scenario, the Feint is more useful on Raichu. And we're Clear Amulet so that we're not getting intimidated on Raichu is a big thing. Also, it's worth noting that if Golem does explode and activates our Lightning Rod, we will get a special attack boost, which means that if we do go for the Terra Ice, Terra Blast, we will be using our special attack. But if we side coaching with Palma onto Raichu in order to increase our attack, then it will go back to being attack Terra Ice, so you can use it variably for whatever you need. If you need to like hit an Assault Vest Mon, then you can increase your attack on Raichu in order to get around the Assault Vest. But if you're fighting like an Iron Defense Body Press Mon, then you could try and proc your own Lightning Rod in order to get Special Ice Terra Blast, which are both useful. Next up, we're throwing on our Caledon onto the team, and our Caledon is probably going to be one of Boltund's best buddies. I really hope we get both Boltund and our Caledon in Generation 10, because they will absolutely clean up some fools. Because with Boltund, we can make the opposing moves electric type, so our Caledon resists them as a dragon type, and then they will also proc our stamina ability, making it so that we take even less damage over time with our Caledon, and then we can increase the damage that we do with Body Press. And we also have just good moves in the Flash Cannon for some strong steel type damage, and we have the Breaking Swipe for lowering the opponent's attack in a spread way, and Snarl for lowering their special attack in a spread way to make it so that they are doing even less damage to our Caledon, so we can build towards that stamina endgame. And of course, we're Assault Vest, just because that's one of the best items to have on our Caledon, because it gives us more inherent special bulk, as well as we're Terra Grass on our Caledon mostly, so that we can ignore powder moves, but also becoming grass gets rid of a lot of our previous weaknesses and gives us some pretty useful resistances. And lastly on this team, I decided to slot on Gothitelle just because it's nice since we have a pretty specific opening in like Golem Palmot or Golem Raichu, that if you want to catch your opponent off guard, you could do something like Archaludon Gothitelle, and if they led like 2 grass types, for example, hoping to try and outdamage Golem before Golem explodes, they now have to deal with the fact that Archaludon is on the field and that they cannot really safely attack into Archaludon without proccing its stamina boost. So with Gothitelle making it so that the opponent cannot swap out with the Shadow Tag, Gothitelle can buy us some extra time for Archaludon to get set up if the opponent has very specific lines that they have to play into and switch out constantly with. But we can figure out the opponent in order to stall a turn, and we have Protect in order to help keep Gothitelle on the field, and Psychic for some pretty strong Psychic stab against Pokemon that are weak to it, like Amoonguss is pretty nice, and then we also have a decently fast taunt into Pokemon that maybe want to go for the Trick Room into us, because this team doesn't really like Trick Room that much, or if they just want to go for an annoying slow status move, we can taunt them with Gothitelle and they will not be able to dodge it. And then the Citrus Berry on Gothitelle is to help keep Gothitelle alive, but also if Gothitelle gets knocked out by one hit from whatever attack, whenever we use Palmot to Revival Blessing back at Gothitelle, if we decide to, Gothitelle will eat the Citrus Berry immediately and be at 75% health, so it's in a bit of a better state. But yeah, that's the basic gist of the team. Let's get into some battles. Alright, so first up we have a battle against a pretty gimmicky Alolan Smeargle strat. You also have the option for the Murkrow Basculegion. Murkrow Basculegion seems a little bit more unlikely here since we have so many electric types, and if they do bring Murkrow Basculegion, it would be a lot harder for them to get over Archaludon. We started the game here with Palmot and Archaludon directly, as they start with Muck and Smeargle, and we immediately coaching into Archaludon to make it defense tanky, but they get the Spore into Archaludon, and Archaludon's going to take its first sleep turn as Muck goes for the Evasion. And Smeargle's Moody goes off, but it doesn't give it a meaningful boost here, and we just continue to coaching Archaludon, but Smeargle now puts Palmot to sleep, and Muck is going for its minimizes, as Smeargle kind of gets one. The speed drop is definitely kind of effective here if it wasn't going for Follow Me. We try to go for the Breaking Swipe, but the Breaking Swipe misses the Muck, but we really want to get one of those on it before Smeargle gets knocked out, so that way if they have Flamigo in the back, Flamigo will copy the attack drop, and Smeargle is redirecting again, but we're still going for the Break Swipe, and we do land the second Breaking Swipe on the Muck. So even though Muck is going to get the Moody here, it does have an attack drop at least for the Flamigo. Unfortunately though, they get the really good roll here, which is special attack down and attack up, so now Flamigo does come in with an attack boost, and we Terra Grass Archaludon to maybe catch close combat with our defense boost on Archaludon, and close combat still does quite a bit to Archaludon here, not making it real easy, and Muck also protects when we try to go for Body Press into it, which I didn't know this before, but Body Press is not actually a guaranteed hit into a minimized Pokemon. Even though we do have a guaranteed hit in Golem's Body Slam would always hit a Pokemon that is used minimized, but Body Press is not, which I feel like that should be added, but it's just me. But with our defense stats on Archaludon, it's really difficult for them to break through us. They do Brave Bird though, which does a lot of damage to Flamigo, but Flamigo is naturally chipping itself away, and we do land a Body Press into Muck, which is pretty good here. And now all they have left is Goldango and Flamigo, who I probably should have Volt Tackled into Goldango, since Flamigo only has so many hits left because of its Life Orb. But Goldango is going to Shadow Ball into Raichu, which is going to clear our field here. But we have Donphan and Palmot in the back, and we can protect Donphan since it is sturdy. They would have to attack twice into it in order to get rid of it this turn, and since one of their Pokemon only has physical attacks, it makes the most sense that we could click counter into Flamigo perhaps, but they just decide to double into Donphan's Protect as Palmot gets off the bringing a Pokemon back to life there. Our Alola Berry was unfortunately knocked off earlier, so we can only go for the Revival Blessing once, but because Flamigo clicked the Brave Bird into Palmot, Flamigo lost a lot of health, and Donphan was able to hit back into Goldango, taking it out, and we do land the Ice Shard into Flamigo, which we only had 3 more chances to hit Flamigo there, because Donphan would click Ice Shard, and then Raichu would be faster than Flamigo to try and click the Volt Tackle into it, and then Flamigo would KO one of us, and it would actually take Life Orb damage. So I think Flamigo would always lose there, but we still had plenty of chances to hit it, thankfully. So we did get unlucky in terms of the Moody boost on the Muck, giving it the attack boost to hand to the Flamigo, but thankfully we were able to squeak out a win there. Here we have a Firewater Grass team with a Dragon Core Breaker and Volcarona Tauros and Rillaboom, and then the Dragon Core Breaker is the Baxcalibur. So we lead Palmont and Alolan Golem here, perhaps hoping to see either the Volcarona or the Baxcalibur so we can click Rock Slide into it, and they immediately swap Rillaboom in here for their Clefable, perhaps expecting an explosion, and Baxcalibur protects, but we just get a +1 Rock Slide into both Mons, which does some nice chip into Rillaboom. Nothing too crazy though. Here we swap into our Caledon and we get a coaching into our Caledon as Rillaboom tried to take out the Golem there in one go, but our Caledon caught the grass type move with ease and is basically back at full health except for the little bit of damage that it took. But now they swap in Volcarona here, seeing that they probably need it in order to beat our Caledon with the boost that we have on it right now. And I swapped in Gothitelle hoping that they wouldn't realize this because it would make it really easy, but they get the swap into Volcarona right when they need it. And then they set up Clover Dance, and I completely forgot that this Volcarona was a Covert Cloak set, otherwise I would have clicked Body Press into it there since Volcarona doesn't have great defense. But we Flash Cannon into Clefable since it's very likely that it could redirect, and we get a Taunt into Volcarona to stop it from getting set up further. And we do dodge a Thunder Wave. Thankfully, might affect things. Our Caledon's definitely always going to be slower. Missing the Heat Wave here is pretty impactful for our Caledon as we get a little bit more health, but we also would have gotten a defense boost here. And we want to keep Gothitelle on the field because we want our Caledon to try and deal with as much as it can. Defense boost goes up again, and we just barely don't take 2 heat waves from the Volcarona, and now Rillaboom comes back onto the field and is able to fake out into our Caledon, and the heat wave is going to take down our Caledon, but Gothitelle barely survives and eats its Citrus Berry and gets some Psychic Chip onto the Volcarona inside of the grassy terrain, and Volcarona is no longer taunted. But now we bring in Golem and we Terra Electric, hoping that the opponent makes a mistake, and they do Giga Drain, but Golem lives here, and Rillaboom tried to U-turn off Gothitelle as Golem gets off the explosion and is thankfully able to clear the field there, and now it is just Baxcalibur and Palmont and Gothitelle, but it's not actually just Palmont and Gothitelle because Palmont can bring back one of our Pokemon, and because we have so much HP investment, Palmont is able to take the Icicle Crash from the Baxcalibur, and we can Revival Blessing again because we have the Leppa Berry to make it so that it's now a 4v1 as Palmont goes down, making it a 3v1 again. But Baxcalibur's probably feeling a little lonely at this point because now we bring Golem back to the field and we protect out the last turn of grassy terrain just to give Golem some extra health. But also if they Glaive Rush into Golem there, then and we had taken the Glaive Rush, that means Gothitelle would have done double damage to Baxcalibur, as we see here, because Golem actually survives the Glaive Rush, which I didn't expect it to, but the Gothitelle Psychic is just going to take out Baxcalibur anyways. So I definitely made a mistake in the fact that I tried to fake out and snarl the Volcarona whenever it was a Covert Cloak set, and that would probably change the game, but because of the Rillaboom not attacking a Golem, Golem was able to bring back the game there. Which is one reason why you should never underestimate the Golem, because the Golem will just go boom and then wipe everything on the field that does not resist the boom. And lastly, we have a Palafin Hyper Offense team with Rain, and then components like Salamence for either going for a Hurricane or Tailwind, and then the grass types that really enjoy being in Rain because they don't take much fire damage. But here we start out with Alolan Golem and Gothitelle hoping to trap in some Pokemon that are weak to Golem, but it's actually the 2 grass types that we see here. So they Power Whip into Golem and we get a Taunt into Amoonguss to keep it from going for the Spore. And now we can bring in our Caledon to catch the grass type move, getting a defense boost here, and we get a pretty sweet amount of psychic damage into Amoonguss as Amoonguss fires back with the super effective Pollen Puff. But now we just gotta protect Gothitelle to keep it on the field because these 2 grass types can't do anything to our Caledon, but our Caledon can do pretty decent damage into them. Not quite sure why I Body Press there. I really should have Flash Cannon into the Amoonguss, but they taunted the Gothitelle to keep us from protecting with Gothitelle, but we doubled Amoonguss on this turn in order to get rid of it on the turn that its taunt wore off. And now Salamence enters the field and gets Air Slash into Gothitelle, and Power Whip is going to double take out Gothitelle. But we get Breaking Swipe, which means that the Sabrina is going to be doing less damage, not so much Salamence, who is a special attacker. But now they bring in Pelipper, seeing as Donphan is pretty risky to try and take out using Serena, since Donphan has the counter for Serena. So Pelipper gets brought in here so that they can go for the Weather Ball into Donphan, and just in case they swapped out Serena into Pelipper, I went for the Ice Shard into Salamence, which kind of makes it look like I'm not doing something that I should be doing there, but the Ice Shard was just to maybe catch Salamence in case Serena swaps out. But our Caledon is still sitting pretty good as Triple Axle goes into Donphan, since the last hit of the Triple Axle would be the only hit that would be countered if Donphan did go for counter, but we get some pretty good body press damage into Sabrina, and they try to double into Donphan, maybe expecting a switch into another mon, but body press takes out Serena, and now it is just Pelipper and Salamence versus the endgame, and since the Serena is gone, we can get good Ice Shard damage into Salamence, not as much since the Salamence got down and Intimidate into us, but the Draco Meteor missed on Salamence, which is not that impactful because I think our Caledon would take it pretty well since it's just a choice Scarf Salamence, but Ice Shard is going to be able to finish off Salamence, and now it is just the Golem left here in the back along with our Caledon, who Pelipper doesn't have anything to beat our Caledon, but we are able to stall out the Rain with Golem protecting, and now that we're outside of Rain, Pelipper can't take Golem either, which it misses the Hurricane into Golem, but it no longer has the Weather Ball because we're outside of Rain, and Golem can just click the Body Slam into Pelipper. So a bit of an unusual endgame there where we ended up just trying to stall out their Pelipper Rain for as long as possible, but once we stalled out Pelipper Rain, Golem was in a pretty good spot to deal damage into the opponent with Rock Slide and stuff. And if Salamence had landed that Draco Meteor, it wouldn't have been able to swap out at that point, so its special attack would just be going down over time. So even if they did deal damage to our Caledon, Golem would still have the game pretty nicely wrapped up there. So yeah, that was the Pokemon that make me wish that we still had Boltund in the game, and as I said before, I think that the reason we don't have Boltund is because of Terra Ground, Electrify, making it so that you take no damage for forever. But these guys are more so taking advantage of like the high risk, high reward kind of thing of getting Golem to explode, or your opponent expecting Golem to explode, and then you counter lead them on the expecting to explode lead, or they counter you on the countering to expecting to explode lead. It's very complicated. But you know what's not complicated? Boltund. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, maybe consider leaving a like on the video, and even consider subscribing because both of those things help me out an absolute ton, and we are not going to miss another day until the end of the 128 teams challenge. I can guarantee you that. We're not missing any more days. We're going to be done with it, and then we're going to do the 128 teams bracket, and it's going to be great. But I will see you in the next video. Thank you.